remember once at a tech conference, I was chatting with the I think he was a guy from Russia, like a developer, and he had this strong accent. He was smart and sharp, and I was super happy because he was exactly what I was looking for. And then he said, but you know what, Martin? What I would truly like to do is I would become an astronaut. I said, what? He must have been like 40 something. I said, what? He said, yes, yeah, because I'd like to go to the moon, discover other, life forms. And I'm like, okay, sure, but aren't you like, from my understanding, you need to, it's a lot of training, and it's completely different from, but he was dead serious, yeah. And then he segued, he moved into discussing like obscure online forums with, and he got into like full-on conspiracy theories. I was like, okay, all right. And I mean, I can't. Too bad, man, because you had me, like I was sold, and then, I don't know why you went there, buddy, but I'm glad you did, because you might as well do it with me. And don't do it with the clients, man, because he was something. He was something else. Hello, my fellow pirates the world over. Today I have I'll be taking you on a trip further than the Caribbeans. We'll be going as far as Argentina to discuss with my guest today, Federico Saravia from Formula.Monks. So Federico and I have been working together for a while now, and there's there's a couple of anecdotes that I can share, but first and foremost, how we started working together. But at any rate, I will let Federico introduce himself. He's currently head of engineering at Formula.Monks, and he will also share some piece of cabin gossip, because we pirates, we love to gossip a lot. So something that is some kind of piece of trivia, something that's not very well known outside of very privileged circles. So Federico, please introduce yourself. I'm all ears. Floor is yours.
Absolutely, Marty. Thank you so much for having me, and please call me Fede. It's easier than Federico, and it doesn't sound like you're annoyed with me. So, like you said, I'm currently head of engineering for Formula.Monks. I've been in the technology industry for about 20 years now. 10 of them have been at Formula.Monks. It's a company that has changed names quite a few times. Started off as a startup of 30 people, which I joined as an engineer. When you met us, our name was Theorem. We were already a kind of a fully fledged consulting firm. And I always get the numbers messed up, but I think it was 2021, we merged with Media.Monks, and now we're in the process of updating our brand to match the brand of our Media.Monks partners. That's why we now are Formula.Monks. Currently head of engineering. We're going through a merger with another technology company that already existed within the Media.Monks world. So we're going to be looking into, from the 30 people I worked with when I joined 10 years ago, to about 1,200 people. So it's been quite a ride. Like you said, I'm located in Argentina, so I'm very, very south in the world. And instead of a piece of gossip, I have a kind of things I do outside of work. Usually, you know how tech people love to code outside of work, and I do love that. I love my computers, but I try to stay as away of computers as I can on the weekends. So I'm a very good cook. I really like cooking, but only for large groups and friends. Like you won't see me cooking every night, for example, but you will see me cooking every Saturday or Sunday, for example. And I'm doing a lot of running and biking. In fact, I just signed up for a biathlon this Sunday that I hope to survive. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. How long? How big is it? How long is a biathlon? It's you need to run and you need to bike, right? You don't need to swim, which is the part that would scare me the most, right? The swimming bit.
I used to swim, but no, it's I'm going to use kilometers because you're Canadian, I'm Argentinian, but it's 33 kilometers biking, and after that it's 11 kilometers running, but it includes climbing up a hill. So that's the part that scares me, because going from the bike, when you stop biking and start running, your legs don't know what's going on, and also you don't have any air left in your lungs, so it's a very weird transition.
So you'll be, I can only imagine. I have a good friend of mine who trained and subsequently did a triathlon, and it starts with swimming, and he almost panicked. He told me, because when he trained, he would train by himself, the swimming bit, and he said, you run into the water, but with like hundreds of people, and there's the people everywhere in the water, and he had to sort of steel himself, right, and not I don't know. And he said he told me he was afraid that he would just snap at that very moment, which would have made for a very short triathlon indeed, but he did not. He doubled down, he steeled himself, got centered again, and he did well. He did well.
It's a great experience. Even if you don't win, like I have zero hopes of winning this Sunday, especially because I'm running with people that are much, much better than me. But the thrill of the competence and the thrill of like you're running with thousands of people doing exactly the same. People are watching you, people are cheering from you. It gets you. I don't know. It's a kind of energy that gets you moving. It's amazing.
Yeah. No, I can only imagine. So you're also a sports aficionado, right? I caught you. You were jogging up to this moment. When you came in on camera, you were still wearing your jogging sweats, and yeah.
Yeah, I became kind of much more into sports like late in my life. Like I'm heading towards my 40s, and I started like practicing heavily maybe 3 years ago. Like I did swimming as a kid. I competed when I was a kid, but I kind of let it go in college. And I read this book. I don't know if I can spoil the book. I will. It's called Exercise by an anthropologist that describes precisely why we need to exercise based on evolution and what's the effect on exercise. What happens to your body when you exercise, when you don't exercise, for different types of exercises, to your heart, to your lungs, to your muscles. And I don't know, it blew my mind. Like after that, like I know exactly what's going on in my body. And as an engineer, that's the kind of thing we like to do, understand the world around us. And it's been powering me since then. Got
it. That's good, man. That's good. I'll write it down. I'll put a link in the show notes as well. But I'm curious to read that. But did you go into all that? Because you mentioned engineers, they like to control stuff, measure stuff. But I know that there's some people out there who are like biohackers or something. They're into nootropics. And like taking all kinds of supplements to like optimize their, their mental and physical capabilities. And some of them, I heard that some of them for some reason put butter in their coffee because of, they are trying to. Maybe I'm getting it all mixed up together, but I heard that people in Silicon Valley were doing that, like.
There's a lot out there. There's I don't know the name of the guy, but there's a guy that has gone in the news recently because he's spending $2 million a month on this kind of research. Like he has a team measuring every little thing his body does, his intake, his output, like everything in the spirit of prolonging his life. No, I'm not that kind of person. Like I like my stats, but I also like to combine them with nature. So I'm like, I rarely take supplements, for example. It's more about everything I can find in like. It's the right combination of like natural, but understand what's going on with your body.
Gotcha. Awesome. So one of the things that I really like about working with you guys is the fact that you're 100. Not only are you 100% remote, but you've been 100% remote for like 15 years or something.
Before it was cool, yeah.
Since the beginning, so that's back in what 2007, roughly.
Yeah, about 15 years.
15 years. And so you were way ahead of the curve, right? When COVID hit and remote started being adopted widely, you guys had already been doing it for more than a decade. And it's around that time also that the book Remote came out. I think it was 2008, a book by the guys at 37 Signals. And they were preaching the virtues of it, the virtues of working remotely, but you guys were already doing it. And I was curious to get your input on what it's like to be running, like, well, in this case, like 100% remote engineering team. The benefits, the challenges, anything you might want to share with the audience about how to do it properly, how to do it, and leverage all that it can bring to the table.
Absolutely. We started this company with the premise that we want to hire the best possible talent, and we don't care where they are located. Like the challenge to me with a co-located company, Silicon Valley has a lot of talent, but ultimately, if you're in San Francisco, you can only reach out to people living close by, right? And if you're not in San Francisco and you're, I don't know, Wisconsin, wherever you are, like, you're restricted by the geographical location. So we wanted to remove those boundaries from the very, very beginning and reach out to the entire world and find the right type of talent. I will say, though, especially before 2020, I think things are still changing right now, but remote is not for everybody. There's people that, first of all, want to be in an office. They need the human connection. They need the water cooler. They need the printer. They need whatever, to buy a car and spend time and have lunch with their coworkers. So there's a human element that definitely is not easily replaceable by remote work. But there are tools to kind of supplement that if you're willing to take the leap, so to speak. Like, for example, not everything has to be work. You do work, from my perspective, you do work a lot more when you're remote. This is something that CEOs calling for back to office should hear. Like, in my experience, I visited many clients, like Formula.Monks. We haven't said this, but we're a consulting firm. I've been to countless of offices in countless of places in the United States. And I compare when I travel there, like, people show up at the office at 9 a.m., and by noon they are having lunch, and they're going to come back at 1 or 1:30, and they do work. But remote work can be like, you just work. You 7 hours, 8 hours, doesn't matter the hours. It's something you shouldn't track when you're working remote, but you're working, right? One of the challenges of that is you could go overboard. You could work forever, literally, behind. I'm pointing at the door, but behind that door, it's my house, right? So I could stay here forever. So you have to kind of draw your boundaries very, very clearly. That's one of the other reasons I started exercising so much, is because, at some point I realized I needed my boundaries. This is my time for my family. This is my time for myself. This is my time for work. Once you have that, then you have your personal portion of what it takes to working remotely. But at the same time, I think one of the things that have to drastically change from an office to remote working is communication. You need to communicate. You need to, it's not that hey, I'm going to a restaurant. No, nobody cares about that. But hey, I have to run an errand. I won't be around for 2 hours, so expect a delayed response. And also understand that you're working with asynchronous tools. If I send you, we use Slack, for example. If I send you a Slack message, I don't expect for you to respond me in the next 15 minutes. You might respond to me in the next hour, 2 hours. I don't know. If I need you, I will call you. Right? If I send you an email, it could be 1 or 2 days before you respond, and that's fine. So you have to be one of that is understanding communication, and the other one, super importantly, especially for ICs, I would say, is be the owner of your work, be the owner of your deadlines. I always tell people that work with us, if you're telling me, hey Fede, I'm going to be done with this by Friday, that's it. I might check in with you on Wednesday and say, how are you doing? But I don't expect that to be the case. I will expect you to be done on Friday. If you are not, for whatever reason, once you're late, tell me, hey, I'm going to be late. Okay, why? Let's have the conversation. Don't surprise other people. And then you have a well-oiled working machine for working remotely.
Awesome. So you need to manage expectations, right? And also take into account the fact that the tools, that some of those tools are asynchronous by nature. So you have other ways to reach someone quicker, like calling. But for Slack, it may be a few hours before you get an answer back. And if you're not at your desk, nobody knows, right? If you don't let people know.
I have a theory that many of the world problems go down to just poor communication. So you have to be on top of your communication. You have to be on top of your tools, and you're all set.
Gotcha. And you mentioned it. I mean, Formula.Monks is Formula One is a sports. Formula.Monks is a company.
Formula One is a common title.
It's a sport.
Cricket.
Yeah, exactly. But when hiring engineers for a consulting company, it's a consulting company. So for hiring engineers for a consulting company, what are the differences between, or what are the things that you want to look for in a potential new hire new hire? For a consulting company as opposed to a product company, what are the differences or the things you need to, because it's not exactly the same profiles that will thrive in both environments. So if you could enlighten us about that.
It's not exactly the same profile, and in fact, that's one of the interviews questions I'd like to ask, especially to higher seniority roles, like why are you looking for consulting? Because there's a lot of people that really don't like consulting, and that's fine. To me, the big difference is, I'm not going to use names here, but if you're working in a insert really cool product company here, it's amazing. You're working with a great team and you have blog posts and you're like, I get to work with beep. But then at some point, unless there's a very strong kind of career development or whatnot, at some point you're doing the exact same work day after day, day after day after day. And maybe you're fine with that. That's what you're looking for. Consulting is much more of a fast changing environment. But also, like, you have to learn on the job multiple times. It's not just about technology. Like, you could be working with a retail company today and you need to understand their business. You could be working with, I don't know, a travel agency next year and you need to understand their industry. You need to understand the business, especially for the type of engineers we hire, which are more senior, very product minded. They need to understand the business they're working on, and that's a constant learning. But also, you're going to deal, depending on the role, with a lot more of context switching, because again, it's not doing the same every day. You're going to deal with ambiguity, the whole process. When you kind of start a product company at the very beginning, there's ambiguity, there's figuring out the requirement, there's okay, we have some money, we have some ideas, what do we make out of that? In consulting, you kind of do that once a quarter, at least, right? You're figuring out new things kind of constantly, so you need to be comfortable with ambiguity. And especially these days, in which the market is not as full of money as it used to be in technology, you know that things are kind of rapidly changing. You need to be able to wear multiple hats. Like if I'm going to use an engineering example here. If you are, a C# engineer, and you expect to just do C# your entire career, that's fine, but that might not be the right thing for consulting. In consulting, you need to know that you might be doing this, and you might be doing a little bit of product tomorrow, and then switch to another language, and now everybody's learning AI, and constantly keep riding the wave, so to speak.
Yeah, and similar to what you would find also in a smaller startup, because that's one of the the things that I mentioned to candidates considering looking for, like a smaller, like 20, 30 people outfit or whatever. You'll need to wear many hats, and if you're dead set and doing the same thing and working in silo or knowing exactly what you're going to be doing every day of the week, then that might not be the place for you. You need to be able to adapt. But at the same time, as I was discussing with Olivier previously from ChargeUp, it's also one of the perks of working for, well, in this case, like a consulting company. It's the diversity you get, right? And it's also a great learning experience. But one thing that may be challenging to some or may not come naturally, and I'd like to hear your input on that and your recommendations, is one of the key thing, correct me if I'm wrong, but is to know how to manage clients' expectation, and that's a big thing. So how would you what are the tips and tricks you would share with an engineer that's either currently working in a consulting environment or a more junior engineer looking to go into that, wondering how to best manage client expectations when you wear a consultant hat?
Going back to the communication is the root of many problems. It's all about communication and transparency, but also it's all about setting the right expectations. Like if you are working with a client, there are different types of clients. There's a type of client that comes to you and say, hey, I need 5 engineers, and you kind of need to understand what's the ask behind 5 engineers. But also there's a type of client that comes and say, hey, I need you to solve this problem for me. What can you do with it? a lot of it is outlining your plans very, very clearly, never hiding anything, like being super transparent. Ultimately, what I recommend people working with us to do is build partnerships. In the consulting ecosystem, each of the teams are going to be different, each of the clients are going to be different, so you end up working kind of in a micro startup, so to speak. And what we aim to do there is to build a partnership. That team, the Formula team and the client team, are one thing working together, and that's one team, and they have their own understanding. So developing that communication, and ultimately, never surprise your client. If you going back to the I'm going to be done by Friday. If you have bad news to share them as soon as possible. Also share your wins, like sometimes. Especially when you're used to, you have a high expectation for your work, you kind of tend to forget to share, like, hey, I did this thing. Like, for me, it might be very small, but the client might be, wow, that's amazing. Share that, communicate, and never surprise the person on the other side of the computer, so to speak.
Exactly. Even, what if it's a surprise? It better be a good surprise, right? Like the the proverb, it's always better to under promise and over deliver than the other way around.
Sure, under promise and over deliver, there's a component to that, but at the same time, if you take it overboard, like if you like, I'm gonna give you, I don't know, these 2 things, and then I show up with 10 things, and the client's gonna be like, what? So you like, are you undercharging me or overcharging me? Like, why are you messing up with me? So surprise is kind of a complicated word there.
Gotcha. All right. Awesome. And if we talk about the process, like the interview process for engineers, specifically for developers or for positions where there's a strong, important technical component, there are just as many interview processes out there as there are companies, right? Everyone varies. Yeah. I've worked with clients who had like 1 or 2 very informal interviews, and I haven't worked with companies like Google and Amazon with their 12 interviews over 2 months countlets, because quite frankly I don't work with these guys, and they're the only ones that can actually pull it off, though. That may change with the markets that we have right now. I think smaller players will be able to get away with much longer interview processes, but at any rate, and a component of these is the technical assessment, and there are many ways to do it. Again, some people just do just chat, like a tech chat with peers, and others would do like a very academic test. There's something with algorithm, like the freaking sorting algorithm and whatnot, and paired coding exercise. I think are also very popular. So what's your input on what would you recommend as, like, first of all, the perfect duration for the whole thing, interview process, and what kind of steps, what specifically what kind of testing?
I love that you asked me that question, because at the beginning you said that you have many anecdotes to share, and probably one of them is, hey, you guys are taking too long to hire my people. Yeah. So, for real. It really depends. For us, we have tried many processes in the last 15 years, and what works for us is we don't go for algorithmic knowledge, because ultimately, when you're going to be working on a project, you have your computer, you have a Google. These days you have AI, you have GitHub Copilot. Like, computers can write code for you. To me, the act of engineering is the act of, like, translating a business requirement to computer lingo, so to speak. And then you insert the programming language in there. So knowing how to do a quick sort on a whiteboard, I don't really care. You're not going to do that in your day-to-day job, right? I think companies get to do that because we do a little bit of that, with our pre-screeners to deal with volume. Like, I can imagine, like, if we open in our best times, we get maybe 400 applicants a week for a position. Google might be getting, 10,000. Yeah. You have to find the needle in the haystack, right? So there's a bit of that kind of filtering, but ultimately what we look for is potential. Like, I want to know that you know your tools, of course, but you're passionate about them. A great example, at the very beginning, we were mostly a Ruby shop, and you know that in the Ruby world, Ruby on Rails is kind of the most famous framework there. I stumbled upon a lot of people that were Ruby on Rails engineers, and at the moment you ask them, like, okay, what's under the hood? How is Rails powered? They were like, well, I don't know that. Magic, maybe? Not necessarily, but they didn't know what's under the hood. I look for that kind of people, and it's ultimately passion, right? It's understanding what you're working on. If you have a car, what's under the hood? How does the engine work?
Yeah.
That's the type of technical engineering. And in order to understand that, it's a bit of like a technical challenge that I'm not going to ask you to do it live, and you're going to have a take-home exercise, take your time. But ultimately, I'm going to check once you present what you have to present, that you understand what you deliver. And then if you use AI or Google, or I don't care. I don't care. The ideal duration, to me, ideally we will be hiring, like, from applying to you get an offer is 1 or 2 weeks. I know that we don't get to do that. I know you gave me that feedback, but that's what we aim for.
How many steps in 1 to 2 weeks, though? How many interviews would you recommend? Would you say is like a sweet spot or a range, maybe a ballpark?
Synchronous interviews, we usually do 2 or 3 at the most. Like, there's going to be the technical interview. I'm not taking the kind of the intake that is usually done by more of a recruiter. So let's have 3. The recruiter gets to know you, ask kind of the basic questions. You have a technical conversation with my team, with some of our strongest engineers, and you have more of a profile, career, like soft skills, so to speak, interview with the hiring manager. There's a couple of assessments in the middle, but the idea is to move that as fast as possible.
Gotcha. Yeah, because otherwise, things can change very quickly for any given
things can change very quickly.
Candidate.
Yeah.
And from my experience, when first of all, the candidates I work with, generally they're already gainfully employed, but from the moment you pique their interest with something, if they weren't looking, they somehow start looking or being more receptive to that. And so from that point on, you might see some other, offers, competing offers get in there. And timing is of the essence. You want to make sure that you pick the right person for the role, but you also want to make sure that if you don't have the luxury basically of waiting a month or 2 months, because things change.
It's timing and also communication. Like, I really don't like companies that interview somebody and then leave you waiting for 2 or 3 weeks to know next steps. That's something we do very strictly. It's going to be 24 or 48 hours at the most until you get whatever response you're going to get. And I expect the same from our candidates. Especially in more senior roles, I have rejected candidates because they showed up 20 minutes late to an interview with no apologies. Like, if you show up and say, hey, sorry I'm late, whatever, my car broke. But if you show up, hey, what's up? 20 minutes later, I'm like, you might not be the right fit for remote work. So like, it's both ways kind of be there for each other.
Speaking of that, I have I've been doing it for over a decade now. On my own. I've done it for a few years before that as a salaried recruiter. And it hasn't happened to me yet that whenever someone, like a candidate, disappears off the surface of the earth, something actually happened to them other than they're plain ghosting us, right? And the polite thing to say is, I hope nothing happened to them. But saying it every time, I'm like, I'm saying it, but I know that, 99.99% chance is, they're just ghosting. And it's highly unprofessional, and they get the black mark. Us pirates, we give the black mark to pirates that are to be excluded, that we don't want to work with anymore. And because I can't stomach that thing, right? I had once in 10 years, 15 years, I had once a candidate to whom something truly ghastly happened for real. Like he had a stroke, I think. It was something serious, and now he's fine, and thankfully. But his wife called me. They were on vacation in the Virgin Islands, but his wife called me to tell me what happened. So nobody disappears off the face of the earth like that. It's always like.
It's complicated. I have a story to tell about that, because at the end of the day, if you have the conversation, it might be fine. One of my best hires, it wasn't through you. You gave me really, really good candidates, but this was before I met you.
Okay.
This guy was one of the first engineering managers we hired. Today he's a very close friend. We kind of went through the process. We extended an offer, and the guy disappeared from the face of earth. I still call him the one that got away. And I called him, like back then we didn't have recruiters, so I was doing the whole thing. I called him, I texted him, I became very, very annoying. And he showed up like 2 weeks later saying like, sorry, my company sent me to a conference, I couldn't really talk, but by the way, I got another offer from a startup, so thank you, but no thank you. I was both disappointed and annoyed, but he gave me a reason, right? So when he came back knocking maybe 3 months later, like, hey, you realize you ghosted that? Yes, I realized that. I'm very disappointed with myself. Okay, don't do that again. Okay, let's work together. And we ended up working together for many years. Man.
That's great. That's great. So you gave him a second chance and all that. Because
I still call him the one that got away. But
the one that got away. That's good, man. That's good. I've had over more than 10 years doing that. I've all sort of things that have happened. All sorts of wonky situations that I won't get into here. But you get, after doing this for a while, this recruiting. You get like a slew of anecdotes and stories and
so many
stories like way out there. I remember once, I'll share just this one to give you an example. I remember once at a tech conference, I was chatting with I think he was a guy from Russia, like a developer, and he had this strong accent. He was smart and sharp, and I was super happy because he was exactly what I was looking for. And then he said, but you know what, Martin, what I would truly like to do is become an engineer. I would become an astronaut. I said, what? He must have been like 40-something. I said, what? He said, yes, because I'd like to go to the moon, discover other, life forms. And I'm like, okay, sure, but aren't you like, from my understanding, you need to, it's a lot of training, and it's completely different from... But he was dead serious, yeah. And then he segued, he moved into discussing like obscure online forums with, and he got into like full-on conspiracy theories. I was like, okay, all right. And I mean, I can't. Too bad, man, because you had me and like I was sold. And then, I don't know why you went there, buddy, but I'm glad you did, because you might as well do it with me. And don't do it with the clients, man, because he was something. He was something else.
You're definitely a crew stories in this line of the business.
Yeah, plenty of them. I'll write a book. I'm thinking about writing a book about what it's like. I think so. Actually, I got so many of them. And so I might just do that. One of the clients, or the type of client that I work with, they might be called like scale up, because they're at this point where they got a product, they got an established I'm talking from a product perspective, but they got an established user base, and now they're looking for the next, they're maybe like 20, 30 people, they're looking to grow in a somewhat rapid fashion. And you've had experience in that kind of environment, so any kind of advice, insider information that you could share with fellow I don't know, like co-founders or people in a hiring position.
Yeah, it's in fact something we really thought of, or we learned from with experience, because going back to our roots, when I joined this company of 30 people, I had no idea who was my manager. The word manager didn't even exist. We were allergic to, like, I'm using air quotes here, corporate lingo, right? We didn't even use video calls back then. Like, if you jumped into a video call, why would you turn on your camera? Look, what's up? We were kind of pagats, we like to be the outliers there. As we started growing, we realized the need for a structure. And that's when, I was one of the first engineering managers, and my first job was to hire engineering managers that could teach me the job. This is the one that got away was one of our first hires that could teach me how to do the job. So anyway, going back to your question about scaling the team, there's a lot of, once you start adding structure, a couple of things happen. First of all, you add overhead. Communication starts becoming a problem. It's not the same to have a team of 5 people. You don't really need structures. You don't really need to do a lot with communication. You don't need really ceremonies. You can have them, but you don't need them. As you start adding more people, you start needing ceremonies. But then, what a team of 5 could accomplish, Not that the team of 10 will accomplish twice. The books have been written about that. So a lot of what we have done was just keep having small teams. Like we have the concept of squad, for example. A squad is a group of 3 to 7 engineers and product managers and other disciplines. But the moment you go above 7, and I would say even 7 is too much, we split the team. It might be the same product, but then you have 2 squads that are completely autonomous, that are working on different parts of the product. And you might need a little coordination between those teams, but it's easy to coordinate 2 teams than 15 people, right? So there's a lot of keeping the teams small, and also pushing autonomy and decision making to the edge. Why would that be? Like me as a head of engineering, I cannot humanly be making decisions on any of the projects, right? The best I can do is if somebody calls me and says, "Hey, Fede, I have this question," I can give guidance, but I need people on the ground that have the context, that have the knowledge to make the decisions.
Right.
So it's a lot of keeping the teams lean, even when you add the structure. Also, like I said, keeping the teams lean, pushing decision making to the edge, and also not having a rigid structure. Like something that I really love about the Formula as we were growing is anybody can call our CEO whenever they want. Like, hey, I have some feedback I want to give you. When can we talk? They don't have to go through their manager, and the manager and the director and the VP and the whatever to get to the CEO. So the structure is there to support, not to add bureaucracy, so to speak.
Okay, gotcha. Perfect. So everybody has direct access to the CEO. Then it's an open door policy, so to speak, right?
Yeah, he's a busy guy, of course, but you can reach out and you will get a response.
Gotcha. Fair enough, my friend. Well, thanks for all the information and advice that you've shared today. Is there anything that you'd like to share that we didn't touch upon? Anything we forgot that you wanted to discuss today?
Maybe something that is also tied to the business of consulting, but I think it's also tied to engineering in general, but it's more important in the world of consulting, is the idea of being a product-minded engineer. This is something that many blog posts are picking up these days, or in the recent months, or even the last year. But I think the concept of the engineer that just gets some requirements written down in Jira, just codes something to the spec of the requirements and delivers for somebody else to test that, is going away. It's not like it doesn't have a lot of runway, so to speak. So if you start your career, you might think, as an engineer especially, you might think that that's the way to go. But then as you grow up and mature in your career, you realize that actually getting involved in the business details. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Maybe I have a better idea. I can share my idea with my product manager, my client, with my whatever, and then be more mindful of the entire process that makes a piece of software. It's not just code, right? You start with requirements. There's going to be some testing. You put it in production. The more you think about the big picture, the more you can grow in your career, in a product company or in a consultant company. So it's that mindset shift that engineers need to learn to make in their careers.
And it ties in with one of the advice I give to people starting in their careers is to quickly get to know like all the moving pieces, like get a bigger picture of what it takes to make a tech startup actually work, or any given company work, and to have more like a global picture as opposed to just being focused on a single piece of code and not exactly knowing what this is going to end up doing. And it also ties in with, I know that this buzzword AI has been bandied, thrown around. Some people are swearing by it, like it's the best thing since sliced bread and the invention of the wheel or whatnot. But the thing is that there's also this sort of apprehension or fear that they're going to be replaced by AI coders or whatever, AI that codes. And that's one of the things that I say, like, you need to, get that bigger picture and develop the communication skills also that go with it. So you can talk to business people, you can talk to software people, you can talk with the different people working in a company, the different moving pieces, and you're comfortable communicating with these people. Because frankly, and it ties into what you said about coding exercises. If what you're really good at is optimizing sorting algorithm, then eventually, of course, if not right away, a computer will be better than you, right?
Right.
And,
that's a good point. If you're optimizing for becoming good at what computers are good, then you might be on the right path there.
Yeah, that's what a savvy use of AI is to have the computer do what it's best at, and the human being do what they're best at.
Exactly. Augmenting each other. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you for taking the time today, Federico. I'm super happy you joined us and shared your wisdom and your experience, which is highly relevant. 100% remote consulting company that's growing, that's doing very well, and stay in touch. And thanks again for your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Marty. I really like working with you. The moment you told me, let's record this podcast, I said, yes, of course. Then I kind of play hard to get with the calendar invites, but I really like working with you, and I appreciate the time.